So there's lots of different AI agent builders popping up, and it's really hard to know which ones are the right ones for your use case and which ones are actually worth learning. I'm reviewing lots of different tools, and Dify ranks highly in terms of maturity, support, and ease of use. So today we're going to build a chatbot agent for an e-commerce store with the new Dify workflow builder. We're going to connect it to a knowledge base, have it make decisions and classify next steps, which you can then deploy as your own app via Next.js onto a website with a simple embed script or onto your own Chrome plugin. So right now Dify has about 39,000 stars on GitHub, and it's growing at a really great rate. What I like about it is that you can actually set it up on its own Docker instance, and you can put it on your own infrastructure if privacy is a concern, and also if you want to run it a lot more efficiently and more affordably. It's got a good RAG pipeline setup. You can actually connect it to your own databases if you want, but if you just want to upload the information, it's got a pretty good way of chunking and breaking down the content so that you can add it in. I didn't need to create anything separate in this case. It's built for the enterprise. It's got good logging that comes with it, so you can actually see and explain what's happening in each flow of the segment and then see logs after the fact. You can connect it to multiple different LLMs. It's not just OpenAI. You've got Anthropic, Claude, Hugging Face, and anything else that you want to work with. And it's all open source, which we absolutely love. Okay, so when you log in, you're going to be presented with several different tabs up the top here. So the Explore tab basically gives you a lot of different app examples. You can actually take those and add them to your workspace, plug in your own knowledge bases, and just see how a typical workflow, and you can see how a typical agent might be set up. So it's divided into multiple different types here. You have an agent, assistants, different functions for companies, and workflow apps. So really you just divide them into two different types of agents, Chatflow or workflow. Chatflow is when you want a more chat-based experience, and workflow is if you want to do something in batches or you're running it continuously with a set amount of steps, if that helps you understand how that works. So then we have the studio over here. This is where we can create from an existing template. You can create a blank one, or you can import a DSL file, which is essentially a template file that you can pull in if you want to share or copy templates. We've also got knowledge base, so you can add in whatever knowledge that you want to. We'll talk about that in a sec. And there's also a wide range of tools, but it is missing some key tools I'd like to see there, like Notion, Airtable, and some other popular no-code tools. So for this tutorial, we're going to build a e-commerce chatbot agent for a fictional PC store. You can run it and wrap it in a Next.js wrapper. You can put it and embed it on any website with a simple JavaScript embed link, and you can actually add it as a Chrome plugin, so that you can have it pop up in any Chrome window of your own and basically ask it questions, which I think is pretty cool. So let's just start the chat here. We're going to ask it, let's say, what motherboards do you have in stock and how much are they? And it's running a workflow process, and it's telling me I have the Asus ROG gaming motherboard in stock for $329. Okay, cool. So let's see how all that's built. So this is the workflow we're going to end up with when we're finished. It has a start node, a question classifier to decide which knowledge base it needs to ask the question from, the separate knowledge bases, and I'll show you how to do knowledge base setup, alternate answers, LLM questioning, and the final answer. And we're also going to have features like a conversation opener, follow-up questions, text-to-speech, speech-to-text, and citations as well, along with content moderation, input and output. So those are all the kind of main features that we'd need. And I'll also show how you can log responses and see how your chatbot is working. Everything you'd need for a production launch. So let's get into it. Okay, so it's important that you guys learn step by step. So I'm actually going to build this with you. We're going to go up here to create from blank. So when you're creating from blank, you're going to get a couple of different options. Essentially, all the tools are available to each one. The only real difference is between chatbot and workflow. So a chatbot is more of a conversational based interface where you're going to have an over and back conversation, more suited to something you'll put on a website for use with a customer or for internal use. And a workflow agent is something like where you would upload a blog post, it would scrape it, and then it would step through a number of steps to output it into different posts across your social media. So it's kind of like a batch process as opposed to a conversational interface. Think of it something a bit like a no-code builder like Zapier or Make. So in our case, we're going to go with a chatbot, and we're going to use the Chatflow because it seems to be the way that Dify is going to be building out its bots going forward. So let's give it a name. I'm going to call it Mr. Robot PC Store. We'll call it version 2. And let's just click create. Okay, so it gives us a starting basis to work from. We have these different nodes. We have the LLM and we have the answer. So if we just go up here and we can type in something here into the chat in the bottom. Hey, how are you today? Hey, I'm just a computer program. So right now we're running, you can select it here. The model is GPT 3.5. And then you have options to select the complete OpenAI suite along with Claude as well. I'm just going to stick with 3.5 for now because it suits our needs. You have complete control over the typical parameters via the API. So things like temperature, presence, frequency, the amount of tokens, that's specific to each model. So next thing to understand is here, all these different nodes that you have. You've got your input fields, which you can add here. You have a choice between short text, paragraph. You can put in a little selection box or a number. And then we've got all these little inputs that have previously been added, which is the user ID, conversation ID, any files that are uploaded, and this is the actual query that gets put through. You can see that this is a string. And then it's showing the next step where it moves on to next. So that's pretty straightforward. So that's our starting point. Okay, so we're going to need a knowledge base attached here. So in order to create the product information, I just went to OpenAI and I said, can you create a CSV file for 20 computer hardware products you would use to build a PC? Give the name, description, price, and what it's used for. And then I also went and created a similar one for software products. So great, can you now create a similar file, but for software commonly installed on a PC, give the name, description, price, and use for columns. And then I just downloaded those as a CSV. Okay, so let's go to the knowledge base. And now we're going to create knowledge. So in terms of data sources, you can import from a new file, you can sync from Notion, or actually sync from a website. What we're going to do is just drag and drop and upload our CSV file here. Okay, once we've done that, we just click next. So next we'll be presented with this screen. It actually gives you a lot of control over all the variables, the chunking, the chunk length, the pre-processing rules, etc. But if that's a bit overwhelming for you at the start, you can just set it to automatic. And we can pick high quality. We're not going to worry about the different types of hybrid searching or full text search. It's great to have those options, but we're just going to stick with vector search for now. And we're going to click save and process. Okay, and it's telling us that that is complete. And then we can go to the document. Now, what's important is that you wait to make sure that the status is available. If you try and work with the knowledge base before it's available, because it needs to pre-process, if it's pretty big, you're not going to get any responses back. So we can actually do some retrieval testing. We can ask it, do you have any fans available? And hit testing. Perfect. And you can see the retrieval that's coming back here. We have a cooler master, we have a supernova power supply, all these things that are relevant to our search. And then you can actually change the settings after the fact as well. Okay, so that's great. We've got our knowledge base set up. So let's go back to Studio again, and let's go back to... Okay, so here we go. We have our starting point, and we have our input fields. So right now, by default, we have the user ID, conversation ID. These are all these are background variables that the system will use to get passed. You'll see them normally set up before you start. The one we're interested in is the query. Sometimes that's not there when you start it up, but you can just add it in by going to input field. The type of field that we want a short text field. You can just call the variable name query, give it a label that the user might see, and give it a max length, and just click save. You can also put in paragraphs. You could have a selection drop down if there's multiple options. Those are our input fields. So let's cancel that for now. So next thing we want is we want to do some classification. So we want to decide which knowledge base we want to search when the user asks a question. So let's hit plus, and then we can go for question classifier here. Perfect. So it's going to use GPT 3.5 to classify the questions. That seems to work perfectly fine. And then you've got these different classes. So if we go over here, first thing you'll see that the input variable is the system query string, which, if you'll remember, it's what we set up here, and it's getting passed in. And then these are the different classes. Okay, so I've just set up the different classes. We have class 1, questions about PC hardware, questions about PC software, and then non-PC related questions. So what we'll want to do next is attach our knowledge bases. So hit plus here, and then knowledge retrieval. And in here, we want to set these variables. So again, we'll see that the query variable is coming from the start. It's the input of the question that the user is going to give. It's important that that's passed. And then we need to add our knowledge. So let's click the plus button here. And then I'm going to pick computer hardware and select add. Now let's duplicate this and then connect to this second class. And in this case, we're going to remove computer hardware and we're going to add software products and click add. And then we're going to add a last node here, which is a simple answer. And the answer is going to be, sorry, I can only handle questions related to building and purchasing for a PC. Okay, so next what we want to do is add in our LLM for each one of these. Now, when we click on the LLM block, we see that the model we're using is GPT-3. We can set the variable here, and here are all the variables that are available from earlier in the flow. So here we have knowledge retrieval and result. So let's just pop that in there. So we'd actually need to refer to the knowledge in our prompt. So here's a recommended prompt from Diffy to help you deal with the workflow. So use the following context as your learned knowledge inside these XML tags. And then we have the actual tags here. So in here, what we want to do is slash, and then you'll see context here. So context is actually pulling in whatever we have inputted here. So the rest of the prompt is just a little bit of cleanup. If you don't know, just say that you don't know. And then if you don't know, when you're not exactly sure, ask for more clarification. So we've added the system prompt, which is all the information in the background going straight to the LLM. And then we want to actually add the user prompt that's passed through. So again, we just hit slash, and then we're going to put in the query. Okay, and next up, we want to just end and answer the node. So let's put our answer in here. So this is going to generate a text string as an output. When we look to the next node, then we want to make sure that we type in slash and we're pulling in that text string as our answer. So it's important always just to remember that you need to link the variables down the chain of blocks. And if you remember that, it helps an awful lot in debugging. Okay, so what else do we want to do? In terms of features, we can do lots of cool things like upload an image. If you want to do that, it's not really relevant in this case. You can have citations and attributions enabled. So that basically means that when it does pull up a response, it will give the knowledge base or chunk that it was actually pulled from. And that's useful for grounding and making sure that the correct information is sourced. Other features we can add, we can have a conversation opener, follow-up, so setting up the next question in the flow. We can have text-to-speech so that the chatbot can actually speak out loud. And we have speech-to-text so that you can actually record what you want to say into the chatbot. It will convert it to text so that it can be processed by the LLM. So you can actually add content moderation as well, and that includes moderation of the inputted text from the user, if there's certain things you don't want them putting them in there or you want to flag for, and also certain things that you don't want the model to output. So these are really important in terms of enterprise operations and making sure that the chatbot doesn't go off the rails. So in our conversation opener, we've given it some basic prompts and some opening questions, and we can save that. So what's happening is we have the query starts off here. It gets classified. The which knowledge base we need is decided, and then the LLM fires up. It's given the context and the background to what knowledge base it needs to pull from and that actual context, and then it's given the prompt from all the way over here. And then with the answer, we can just go up here and type slash, add in text, which we've already done. And we should be good to go on both of those. And we can hit the preview button up here. So it's giving us a preview of the app. Hey, I'm here to help you build your custom PC. I've got access to our catalog, pricing. What would you like to know? Yeah, sure. So what motherboards do you have? So you can see it running through. It's asked the knowledge base. It's gone to the LLM. And here we go. I have the Asus ROG Strix e-gaming motherboard in stock, and it's giving us the citation of where it came from. If you don't actually want to expose your entire catalog here as a citation, you can either break it down into smaller chunks, or you can just go to features here, go back to add feature, and just switch off the citations here. Perfect. So now we can actually publish this. So let's go up here and click publish. And now we have the option to embed into a site. So we can basically take this iframe, or we can put a little script widget that will pop up on a website. So you just put this into your Webflow or WordPress template and you'll have a widget that'll pop up. Or you can actually install the Dify Chrome extension, and it will, and you add in this URL, and in your Chrome extension, you can just click a button down on the bottom right and it will constantly pop up. So you'll have it with you wherever you browse. So I think that's pretty cool. So let's go back to publish here and we can run the app. And just out of interest, you can do lots of different changes here and create lots of different previews. And they won't actually get published until you actually hit publish. So that's a great way if you're updating and want to test without having it released to production. So let's go and run the app here and start the chat. Let me see. Do you have Microsoft Office and how much is it? It's running through the workflow process. Yes, we have Microsoft Office and it's priced at $99. Okay, that's pretty cool. So Diffy gives you full API access to your chatbot or your chat workflow that you've created. And there's also a helpful starter GitHub called Diffy Conversation, which basically allows you to spin up a Next.js app with your API integrated. So basically you're getting a whole custom app for free there, which is pretty cool. So another great enterprise feature is logging and annotations. So all the requests that are passed through, you can double check them and you can annotate them for debugging. And there's also a really powerful monitoring built in. You can see token usage, session interaction, total messages, and it even has user satisfaction rate using some semantic analysis, active users, etc. So what we've built here is basically a chatbot using the Chatflow approach, where you've got node after node after node, and we have an output. You can also create a defined workflow. And to be honest, it looks exactly the same as this. The only difference is that instead of an answer at the end, we just have an endpoint. And then that whole workflow can be used as a custom tool. It can be called by API, by Make, or any other service that you want, and it can run independently. And you can also set it up to run in batches. There's lots of other cool tools as part of the workflow in terms of using if-else statements. You can do iteration if you have to run through and map through multiple different sources of content, and lots of other things like variable aggregation and HTTP requests. So this is very similar to Make if you've used that before, which really makes this quite extensible. If you've got a HTTP request built in, you can essentially make requests to any API that's out there and build whatever it is that you need to build. So that's a great function built in. So you have multiple different options you can run. There's Diffy Cloud, which is basically plug and play. It's a cloud-based web app, but you do have to pay for it. They offer a free trial where you can get up and running and test it out as much as you want. And then packages start from about $59 a month after that. You can also just host it yourself for free using the community edition. There's a starter guide here. You can set it up with Docker. Happy to do a video on that if anyone's interested. And then, of course, they've got more enterprise level deployments if you like. What's great is that you can deploy this on your own infrastructure or on premise, and they offer white label abilities as well. So hopefully you're up and running. If you have any questions on Dify, drop them in the comments, and I'd love to know what your favorite AI agent builder is at the moment and why. If you're into AI and automation for your business as a consultant, or just have a curiosity, drop me a subscribe. I'll be doing a lot more reviews and tutorials like this over the coming weeks.